Hello, welcome to Get Connected. I'm Julie Bartkus, and joining me with my fantastic co-host and marketing guru, Mr. Michael Tasner. And today we're here to talk to you about success strategies to help you be more successful in your childcare program and in your life. And the topic that's big, hot, and heavy on my plate this month is workplace gossip. And it could even be gossip with staff, gossip with parents. So Michael and I figure we'd start talking about that. And if you've got any questions, of course, please let us know what those questions are, and we'd be happy to answer them. So, hey, Michael, how you doing today?
Everything is good here. Everything is good. Up a little bit late watching election stuff, but had a I don't know what I'm up to. Maybe coffee cup number 4 today, and
Number 4, yeah,
just cranking away over here. Weather is insanely beautiful in Western New York, so this weekend's going to be 70, which is unheard of.
Here too, 70 degrees.
So I think we're going to hang some Christmas lights early. Not necessarily, maybe not turn them on, but just get them hung. So I'm not doing it when it's like -20 out in December. So
yeah. And if you're here tuning in and you're enjoying some beautiful weather in your area, let us know, because I don't know about you, but when it hits 40s and 30s and it's dark at 4:30, I start to feel like bone cold. Like it is just like in my bones. And so I'm really happy that we're getting 60, 65, 70. I'm cool with that. So if you're tuning in, whether you're watching live or to the replay, how's the weather out by you guys and how you doing? I know everybody's kind of sitting on the edge of their seats right now, waiting for the big announcement in terms of who the next president will be. And I know sometimes it's really hard. You just got to kind of tune out a little bit so that you can move forward with your life. So
definitely.
And I know that's what you and I, Michael, are feeling a little bit like, okay, we just got to unplug from social media and just really focus on the folks that we're here to serve.
Yeah, and it's also interesting and challenging at the same time when both you and I are so social largely social from a business perspective. So it's like you go on anything and that's all that you're seeing. So,
yeah.
But yeah, to your point, you've got to keep forging ahead regardless of whatever outcome. So.
Absolutely. And today we're talking about workplace gossip. Is this an issue that you're struggling with? And I know in so many of the programs that I've been working with, and this is for over 20 years, and this is a problem that is pretty thick, whether you're in America, whether you're China, Greece, wherever. I remember getting calls when I first started consulting in this industry from all over the world saying, all right, we have gossip. And it's interesting how some countries handle gossip differently. We could talk about that a little bit, but for the most part, the majority find that gossip is something they just want to go away. And it doesn't just stop with one staff member gossiping to another staff member. It's also a staff member gossiping to a parent, or parents gossiping, about your center to whoever and anyone who's willing to listen. So have you heard a lot about gossip? Any gossip about gossip, Michael?
So the one that I deal with, and Sarah says it's a big problem. The one that I tend to hear more about is gossip on the parent-to-parent side. So we see a lot with like the moms groups on Facebook, for example, and I would call it, gossip, but negativity. Just the emotional aspect of leaving your son or daughter or multiple kids at a center, it just kind of creates a different level of emotions. But to your point, there's different ends of the spectrum of kind of workplace gossip with your team and kind of the ripple effect that causes. So there's that, and then there's the negativity and the gossip on the parent side. But they're all really intertwined. And I know that you've got a whole program around gossip, and I know it's something that you've been working on quite a bit over the last several years. But it's one that's not that we don't work on it. It's more we're usually reacting to something that's already happened. So, hey, Michael, we're on this moms group on Facebook that we're kind of stealth, and we're seeing all these crazy things that are not factual. Or, hey, Michael, a staff member that was fired or someone that quit, they left 3 negative reviews, one on Facebook, one on Yelp, and one on Google, for example. So that's more of the stuff that I tend to see and deal with. But in working with owners and directors, I mean, I can kind of get a vibe, and usually it's more from the owners of like, oh, I don't like this person or that person. And I tend not to go down the rabbit hole just because it's really not my area of expertise. So I'll just kind of listen, and then usually I'll try and kind of redirect and steer a little bit. And just like, okay, well, but the downside to that is that it's still kind of creating that culture that is not ideal. And if it's going to be hindering performance, then it's only going to continue to drive things down.
Yeah, and especially with our smaller, mom and pop childcare programs where everybody in the town knows everybody, then gossip can really take you down. Whether it's staff gossiping, whether it's parents gossiping. And I remember getting a call from a childcare owner once who said that she had a negative experience with one parent, and that parent was pretty influential in the community. And that parent gossiped to somebody else, then that gossip spread. And she said before she knew it, there was so much negativity out there about her program that she had to close her doors. And she was coming to me saying, all right, I know you deal with staff gossip, but what can we do when it's on the parent level? So, that's a big question that comes up a lot too. And to me, I want people to understand and think about gossip as a symptom. Gossip is symptomatic, just like all other destructive behaviors in the workplace, whether it's call outs, absenteeism, turnover, tardiness, negativity, drama, blaming, complaining. All those things are symptomatic of other things that aren't going on in the workplace. And what we want to do is really treat the cause of those symptoms, right? Like when we have a medical issue, we just don't want a Band-Aid slapped on something and say, there you go, that thing that's growing off your shoulder, it's healed now, just ignore it and put the Band-Aid on it, right? And then you remove the Band-Aid and it's covered in pus and blood and gook and it looks horrible. But that's the same thing that happens in our organizations, is that we put a lot of Band-Aids on things in hopes that will cover the issue and that it will just go away, or at least not be a pain in the butt right now. But it typically does, and it typically becomes bigger and more troublesome. And that's really the important thing to understand. So if you're writing down any notes from today, gossip is a symptom. Anything that's destructive in your workplace that you experience is symptomatic of something else that's going on. And that's so key to understand.
Oh, and it's interesting though that you're saying that. I remember a conversation I had with an owner, and she was like, when I was on video and she blew a kiss, she's like, well, sayonara to that bad energy. And it's like, it just like, I mean, I saw the shift in her immediately. And
nice.
I don't know how we even got on the conversation, but maybe we were talking about team a little bit, because usually on my intake call, I'll go through, tell me a little bit about your team. And I'm interested in seeing who's actually, interacting with the families and the parents. And tell me a little bit more about his or her personality. And exactly as you said, if those people start going down that path, it just, it makes things really, really challenging. But as you were saying, there's always more to the story. And I've been doing a lot of inward looking at myself to make sure that I'm also not the one that's kind of indirectly spreading gossip more on accident, candidly. And I, in anticipation of this call today, I started thinking about that. I'm like, geez, maybe I'm like starting to spread some of these things without even knowing it, and kind of creating some awkwardness as well.
Well, that's good, and awareness is one of the first steps in eliminating gossip. So it's good that you had that. And we all do it. And I think that we get to that place where we gossip, and this is in my experience, is because we're not letting go of things. And once we learn how to let go, then we don't feel like we have the need to do something that is a human behavior, and that is to vent. And we all, when things happen to us, we're like, oh, who can I vent this to? Who can I share this with? I need to feel some relief from this pain. I need somebody to feel the misery with me. And although misery loves company, I always say success throws a much better party. So when you're thinking about gossiping and thinking about the words that are coming out of your mouth, you got to be careful, because those are things that you're going to be attracting to yourself too. So if you're gossiping as an owner about negativity of a staff, or a parent who's doing this and this and this, and you're focusing on those things, you're creating a pattern where you're going to be actually attracting more of those things in your life. So in the gossip program that I developed, we identify 7 main reasons why gossip exists, and venting is one of them. And we all have this need to vent, but we've got to really ask ourselves, who am I venting to? Am I venting to another staff member about another staff member? And what kind of protocol is that setting? And that's really important to look at. And I've been called into so many childcare programs where we do communication programs, effective communication or constructive communication, as I call it. And it's really interesting to hear the owner, and not to pick on any owners out there, but we have to recognize that responsibility with how our organization communicates starts from the top. And if we could swallow that tough pill, then we can make big leaps with making that change happen. But I've often had owners pull me aside and tell me all the information about every single staff member and why this isn't happening, that this isn't happening. And I'm, okay, I could see where the pattern's starting here, but you're setting the protocol. We could totally change that so that when something comes into us and we feel like we have the need to gossip about it, we could stop ourselves and go, wait a second. I'm going to choose a new approach here. I'm going to choose something different. And the more positive you become in your mindset, the less you're going to have a need to vent. And the less you have a need to vent, the less gossip there's going to be. So that's one big thing to recognize, whether you're an owner, a director, assistant director, staff member. And I've even had teachers come up to me and say, Julie, I work in a really gossipy place. I want it to stop. I don't want to be a part of it. How do I break out of the chain? So and that always inspires me when we have people of all different positions saying, I really don't want to be in a gossipy workplace. Help.
And I would assume that, we talked about it not last week, but the week prior, we were talking all about hiring and recruiting great team members. Correct me if I'm wrong, or I would make the assumption that, one of the things that a lot of people, when they're looking at joining your center from a staffing standpoint, is they would love to hear something like, not that you would say this during an interview, but we're a gossip-free workplace. But it's something, I don't know if you've coached any of the owners around that, or how they can. I'm trying to think what I'm getting at, but maybe using that as a little bit of a selling point, that you've got an open culture that, thrives on positivity, and we really try to eliminate because I would assume that a lot of the teachers and things like that, if they've been used to that in the past, and a lot of it lately that we've been hearing, it is about pay. Been getting a lot of questions around, pay, and you've got one teacher that's been here longer than the other is making less than a new person, and that kind of creates, that creates that whole string of gossip. But how would you use it, I guess, on or in an interview, or is that something that you would even, I guess, market to attract talent?
The only way I would use it to attract talent is if it is true. So if you say we are gossip free, are you really, or is that the dream? Because if you get somebody in who's really good and they know how to break out of the gossip chain and they know how to not gossip, but then you throw them in with a bunch of gossipers, guess what's going to happen? Especially with women, we have a big, we have a big need to fit in, right? We want to be a part of what's going on. So one of two things will happen is that this fantastic person who we hired will all of a sudden start gossiping, or they'll leave in a matter of a week or two because they're like, well, wait a second, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't what I want. So you could use it in your advertising or in your marketing for staff, as long as you do have a really concrete, solid plan of action in place to help people break out of the gossip chain quickly and effectively. But if you have an existing gossipy environment, it's really tough to use that as a selling point, because it's almost like you're fibbing, you're manipulating. And whenever I talk to people about the interview process, you've got to ask yourself, well, hey, a second, during the interview process, who's manipulating who? Because sometimes we're overselling the position and we're making it sound, like, oh, this is, going to be really good. And then we get somebody in, they're like, oh, well, wait a second. And you might be really honest with, the children and what's required to be successful in that classroom. But then there's a whole team aspect. We're great as a team. We're wonderful. I love my team. They love me. All these kind of buzzwords that we use without really clearly defining that. But if you have a gossipy workplace, I would advocate you to take the more truthful route, saying, this is what's going on in our workplace right now. However, efforts are in place to eliminate workplace gossip. And this is what we're doing. Here's step A, step B, step C. Now, as a new person coming in, how would you line up with that new process that we have in place? How would you be able to implement that in spite of other people who might be gossiping? So you want to be truthful, but really look like, is this person strong enough to stand there? And in spite of other people gossiping, can they stick with the processes that you're putting in place to break out of that gossip chain?
Yeah, that's as you were talking, and I'm kind of processing it. If I could talk today, that makes a lot of sense. That you want to make sure that obviously you're speaking your truths. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, one of the things that doesn't relate to gossip that I tell a lot of people when they come in and work in my organization is I don't want them to assume that it's a well-oiled machine and everything is going to be flawless from day one. Otherwise, I would be lying. I mean, there's fire drills every single day here, figuratively speaking, and different. So you've got to be able to pivot. And if you can't thrive and, I mean, evolve and pivot in an environment like that, to your point with on the gossip side, they're going to be backed into a corner pretty quickly, and that turns pretty negative.
Yeah, and as a leader, it's really hard to tell everybody. And I've seen leaders, on the daily plan, right? Don't gossip, be more professional. And people are like, well, what does that mean? Am I not supposed to talk to anybody? What am I supposed to do? So if as a leader, whether you're an owner, director, assistant director, you're leading your team, if you don't know how to stop gossiping or break out of that, it's really a hard expectation to have on your staff that they're going to do that. So you really have to know how you can do that as for yourself. And it crosses boundaries. And to me, gossip's not just about workplace. I mean, it's a style of communication. It's what you talk about at family get-togethers. Are you talking about family members who aren't there, family members who are screwing up their lives, or family members who are, whatever it is that they're doing? And you have the same conversations over and over and over and over again every holiday. So you really have to look at, well, am I communicating the same way personally as I am professionally? And how do I up-level the style of communication that I have? And how do I up-level who I'm being? And, that's a huge, huge factor in what and who you're able to attract into your life.
So if we look at, so I know that you've got 7 areas kind of that are driving workplace gossip.
Mm-hmm.
What was the one that you mentioned, or is there one that you feel is causing the most issues? If that's even the right way to phrase it. But I mean, obviously, all of them are creating challenges.
Yeah.
But is there one in particular?
I think the need to vent is a big one, because people don't know what to do with their frustrations when they feel them. So again, it's coming back to having a policy in place or a procedure in place that if you're upset about an issue, here are the different steps that you can take to resolve that issue. And then you model it, you model it, you model it. But a lot of times in childcare programs, what I hear coming in as a consultant is when I interview all the different levels of staff, is that there's issues and there's problems, and they get brought up to the leadership team, but then they kind of like fade away. But they don't fade away in the person's mind. It's kind of like it expands and it expands, and then they start holding grudges and resentments. And, it could be 10 years later, and, things are still being thought about that happened 10 years ago, and they're holding on to it. So the need to vent is a big one, but how can your team members vent constructively? How can that happen? And I would really be thinking about that. Another big reason is because they have the need to fit in. But we have to help them see, well, what is it that you're trying to fit into? And that's really important to look at, because people don't often, in the midst of their workplace communication, see how it's going to impact them on a professional level. And, really the way that we communicate throughout the day, it determines like how we end the day feeling. Do we want to leave the day feeling energized and productive and happy? Or do we want to leave the day feeling stressed, drained, hopeless? So I would really start the day with some good intention words on how you're going to feel, and then pick communication styles that line up with that, especially from an owner perspective, and then see how difficult it can be to really stay in line with how you want to feel at the end of the day.
So if we looked at, and that was a great point, so I hope everyone's taking notes, and I mean, you're, as always, throwing a lot of really great actionable tactics and tips. If we're looking at the need to vent, and you mentioned kind of having an outlet, what would you suggest to our listeners and then everyone that's listening to the replay thereafter.
Mhm.
What are some of the, I guess, ideas or tactics? I mean, the most basic can be, I mean, having a little spot for, I guess, employee comment cards. I'll give you a couple that we've done internally to try and
Okay,
eliminate this. So
cool.
the first one is just kind of meeting cadence. So we do a weekly meeting every Monday with the team. I'm on every single one of those meetings, almost every single one of them. And I'll do a little bit of a kind of CEO update, for example. And that's where I'm kind of pretty much sharing an open book, anything that we're working on, any potential acquisitions that are on the table, new clients, challenges, anything like that, hiring. So we do that every Monday with the entire team. We have a way, it's literally just a Google form. We used to use a software called Tiny Pulse, but then we kind of simplified and just went back to the basics with a Google form. It's 100% anonymous, where they can just send ideas and or anonymous questions.
Mhm.
And I can respond when they get those responses back. And it doesn't associate it with their name unless they wanted to put their name on it. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is that we have also a regular meeting cadence with each person's respective manager. And we're not like this 25-layer organization by any means, but everyone has a supervisor, whether it's myself or someone else on the team, but they have a typically weekly or bi-weekly cadence where just a structured one-on-one meeting. And that is meant to be the place where if they want to share anything, any questions, feedback, etc., that is the place that they can do it. So those are three that we've done.
Yeah, love
But
those
I
ideas.
would love to hear if there's some others that you recommend or some
Yeah.
things that you've seen implemented that have worked pretty well.
Yeah, and I think those ideas are great. Any opportunity you give your people to really talk about issues and to resolve issues is a great thing. So the three that you mentioned, I think, are really valuable. Also, in the process, I really want to teach people how to accept personal responsibility for how they communicate their feelings and their venting. So part of it is training even on getting a journal and being able to write out your frustrations and your feelings. Because what we have to realize is that a lot of what's going on in our childcare programs is not just one person. Let's say Sally comes up to Susan and she says something, and now Susan's all ticked off, and there's something drastically wrong with Sally because Sally ticks Susan off, right? Because that's usually how it goes down. But there's more going on than just that. It's that Sally said something to Susan. It triggered Susan back to a very painful moment, like in her childhood. It's that deep. And then now Susan's thinking all those things and feelings that she felt before, all of her insecurities, because now Susan triggered her. So we have to teach people in the process, especially once we understand, well, what are people gossiping about, that there's a personal responsibility here too, to take ownership of your feelings. And our feelings, typically we say like, oh, we want to communicate our feelings so that people can understand our feelings and so that they can fix our feelings. Well, how about you understand your feelings and you take care of your feelings and you nurture your feelings and you fix your feelings so that you feel differently? Because in a matter of 60 seconds, when you reflect on the right thoughts, your feelings are fixed and you can feel totally different, totally elevated. So it really depends upon what kind of gossip is going on. And Michael identified some very important steps, but also incorporate the component of personal responsibility when it comes to gossip. So how do we take responsibility? Can we think different thoughts about the situation? Can we assume innocence on the other person's part, meaning she didn't intend to hurt your feelings? Meaning you get out a journal and you write about your feelings. You write about you were hurt. You write about other times that may have come up for you so that you can really learn more about yourself. There's also a process to teach in letting go, right? Just because a parent said something to you, it doesn't mean that thing that she said to you is law by any means. It's her perspective of the situation at a moment in time. So sometimes you just have to release it, let it go, use your sense of humor, whatever it might be. But there's specific things that you can learn just so that you can release it, give it back to the universe. It's not yours, and stand in confidence and stand in faith with who you know you are.
And I think that is, I mean, at least for me personally, that everything that you just mentioned is stuff that I personally do not do. And when I'm thinking of it again, as always, thinking, reflecting, that to me is a lot more important and critical than just setting up regular meetings with your team. Because if you're not putting yourself in the right position, as you just shared, and looking at how you approach it, it's just going to continue to be repetitive. So it sounds like, candidly, even before anything, you've got to be looking inward and making sure that you're in the right place. And like one of the phrases you mentioned earlier is, misery loves company. So, if you're personally miserable or down, then you're going to just continue to kind of percolate that throughout your center or multiple centers. And I definitely have seen that with directors in particular really start to jump if you've got multi-centers, from one center to the next center to the next center. If you've got regional managers that oversee locations and all of a sudden the regional manager is toxic. There's a lot of kind of crazy things that can start to happen. But as you said, it really starts with you looking inward and putting yourself in the right spot.
Yeah. And I love your transparency, Michael. I love that you come forward and say, those are some things I should be doing.
Oh, definitely. I'm always thinking as we're talking through these, and like everything, I'm a student and I guess a product of the product. And I have just started thinking of different situations that I've probably have pushed myself, that like, all of a sudden there's gossip spreading around me terminating somebody, and all of a sudden half the company's talking about it, and oh Jesus, what's going on here? And I next, and then I like, what is going on with everyone's energy today? And then I take a step back, and I could tell that my energy is funky, because a lot of people, what I don't realize even on Zoom calls is, I think a lot of people, they're clicking the little button to like save the video so you can watch one particular person's video, and they're watching kind of my energy and my attitude and kind of how I'm responding, or am I attentive, distracted, smiling, not smiling, and kind of taking that as well. So no, this is all great advice.
Yeah, and it's really, and any recommendations I make are always to dig deeper than what's at surface. And like I said, the strategies that you implement are great. But we also have to look at, well, how are we personally dealing with issues that we're not letting go of? Or because something can happen. Let's say a parent comes in and you have an issue with that parent, and you just feel so frustrated about that parent. Maybe they're not paying for the third week in the row, or they're expecting you to do that. How dare they expect you to do that? And you need to vent to somebody. So you go to your trusted staff member and you say, listen, Lucy, I'm going to try to pick some new names here. Listen, Lucy, I got to talk to you. And this just happened with this parent. I'm just upset. I just need an ear to listen to me. And okay, it's off of me. Thank you so much. But now the parent comes back in and they apologize to you or whatever. You make nice, you make friends. Then what's really interesting to me that happens is that even though now you feel better about the situation, guess who's still feeling negative? Guess who's still feeling negative about that parent? Guess who's still holding now something against that parent who is a client that you want to serve? So you may have let go of that because, now nice was made, but the person who you vented to is still going to be hanging on to that long after that incident passes. And it's going to become like, just like a bag, I don't know what, a bag of bricks, on your back that you're carrying around. And now Lucy's got one for this parent, one for this one. And that's the energy that she's bringing into the workplace. So anything that you can do that really just helps you let go and stand in your own confidence. You don't have to vent if you know how to let go. You don't have to vent to your staff if you have a coach who you could vent to. You don't have to vent to your staff if you have a stress management group or support group that you can vent to, or a journal that you go to and say, I freaking whatever, and you write it down, or you go in the bathroom and you scroll it all down on a piece of toilet paper and then you flush it. There's just different ways that you can get it out without dragging a whole team of confidence down.
Oh, and that's a really great point. And so there's one of the mastermind groups that I'm in, and one of the guys that I have followed and have learned a lot from is a guy named Garrett White. Mm-hmm. And really, really intense guy. So he's one of those, like, you love him or you hate him. So he's not like one of your big fans or mentors like Les Brown, for example, where, I mean, he's pretty much everybody loves Les Brown. He's just kind of like a teddy bear kind of carrot, like he just is really loving. I should have put one of these days I'll have my new puppy on one of these. I just got a new puppy last week, and she literally looks like a teddy bear.
Yeah. And dogs are so good at letting go, right? I mean, you could ignore your dog all day long. The next day you come back and it's like a fresh slate, right? You know, I mean, what if we could do that with everybody every day? It's like, oh, it's a fresh slate today. No, but there's no resentments. There's no holding on. There's no judgments. We are here as a team today is fresh and new and exciting. And that's one thing I love about dogs. Cats, different story, but dogs.
And what I was thinking is with Garrett White, so one of the big things, so you mentioned journaling, and he has this where he kind of calls it the stack. And you basically, similar to a journal, you can do it through a journal or do it electronically, whatever is easier for you. And you kind of write, what are you mad about right now? So let's just say it's like you're mad because your chef called in sick. So I actually had a strategy call scheduled for Friday, and then the person mentioned their chef called off. So we had to reschedule it actually for, I think, this afternoon or something. So, so like my chef called off. I'm like, okay. So let's say that pisses you off in the moment. And either it's going to ruin your day, and that as you were saying, I mean, you're going to start talking to your staff about it. Oh my God, I can't believe Sheila called off sick, and this is ridiculous, and it's a Friday, and I've got all these other things to do. And so you would pause and you would do this stack, and you would title it something like, I'm pissed off because Sheila called off sick. And then you go through his process where you're basically, so how does this make you feel? Why are you feeling this way? But the biggest thing about doing it, and as I'm talking this through, I'm reminding myself that I need to continue doing this, is that towards the end of it, you actually flip the model on its head. And you'll ask yourself something like, well, is this really true? Well, so you're pissed off that she didn't call in sick. Okay, well, or because she called in sick. Well, what if you were to flip it? And maybe it's, well, you're mad at yourself because you don't have plan Bs, for example, or, well, geez, you were talking about ordering food instead of relying on a chef or a cook, or so you really end up almost flipping it on its head. And by the end of doing this, almost every time you go through it, it pivots your energy because you release it, as you were saying. But I've also realized in doing this that usually it's not either the person or the situation you're mad at. It's almost always something else. Yeah. So like right now we have a team member that's going to be parting ways with us. And in the moment, I was like, oh, this is ridiculous. I've invested all this time and money training him or her. Just say him or her.
You sound a lot like our childcare owners right now.
Yeah, and I've heard this also. Like there are different certifications now. So like that was my initial reaction. I'm like, I just gave him like $20,000 worth of all of our digital marketing training and et cetera, et cetera. So like was in the moment, and I definitely was gossiping in the moment on that. But then I did a stack later in the day and realized when I started to flip the situation on its head that to me, in terms of releasing it, then I'm sure you would agree that anytime something like this happens, as long as you're open to receiving, that someone else that's even better is going to end up coming into your life. And then I realized that. And then I realized, so maybe we need a different role. And that's actually not even the role that we wanted. Maybe it's a different role. So it's capturing that craziness kind of in the moment. But to your point, it's making sure that you don't kind of release it across your whole center.
Yeah. When you think about it, especially in that situation, what comes in and takes over, right? You're sitting there in your visionary shoes, and then all of a sudden, wham, it's like, whoa, there's fear, there's lack, there's limitation, right? And you feel those things. And then it's like, well, wait a second. If I flip this around and if I focus on there's abundance, there is no limitations, there is plenty of people to come and work for me, then you get a whole different perspective on the situation. But when there's fear, there's lack, there's limitation, there's feelings of competition that's set in, even for staff. that happens where it's kind of like we get triggered to gossip because we're thinking, oh, well, who do they think they are to think they're better than us, right? Maybe they've got a college degree or this or that. Well, who do they think they are? So we go down that road because we're feeling like there's lack in our own life. And if we start looking at really the true abundance that is there and the brilliance that makes us who we are, there's really none of those things to complain about, because it is an abundant universe. It's an abundant world. And it's really tough to see that reality at times because we're so focusing on what's not there, where we're losing control, how we tried to circumvent this and we didn't. So there's all those kind of things. And I just want to say that if you're here tuning in and you got a question or a comment, please leave one for us. I'd love to hear from you, love to hear how you're relating to this and to help you further.
Yeah, I'm going to type a few things here to get some more questions. So we do have one question from Sarah relating to how are you dealing with negativity, largely parent negativity that I'm seeing, and she put it seeing in air quotes. I'm assuming that means that you maybe shouldn't be seeing them, but similar to what I mentioned earlier, in a private closed group. It's hard to not reply and defend myself. Should I have people go in and defend for me? Do I address the parent? What would you suggest here? So that's a good loaded question. But I'm going to give you the tough question because I think I'm going to have to think through an answer on that one.
Okay, yeah, and I think you'll probably think of a pretty good one. But if you hear somebody else, if you're a part of that group and you have somebody else who's ranting and raving and they're stating negatives, and you're in that group, I don't think there's anything wrong with coming forward and saying, hey, I'm a member of this group, and I'm so sorry to hear that you had that experience, but I wanted to say that, our vision is to, and here's some improvements that we've made. So you could come back just like you would if there was a negative review on Google. Is you come back and you could acknowledge it, but you're right in there in that group. So you could say, I'm a group member and I've been in here, and that way people know that you're in there. And I tell you what, there's groups out there where I know too, whether they're talking about childcare coaches, there could be negativity about me, negativity about you, people's different perceptions. So it's really hard to control and monitor everybody's perceptions, especially if they don't know and they just go on somebody else's word. But the biggest thing you could do, I think, is to show up in the group as just this positive force to be reckoned with, right? So you make yourself known in that group for more than just this comment. And so it's always like when, a staff member does something wrong and then they get called into the principal's office. I'll use my own air quotes, the principal's office, because that's what they feel like. They feel like, oh, well, they don't call me in there to say anything good. It's just when we're in trouble, then we get called in to go and see the owner. So it's the same thing. You don't want to just step up and start being an active participant in the group when there's a negative comment. I do believe that you could really write something very constructive there, but make yourself known as a powerful force in that group that people are like, no, wait a second. We know Sarah. She's in this group. She's posting things. She's incredibly helpful. She's incredibly insightful. She's given things to the kiddos in the community. So they've got this whole other perception of you. And that's what you want to do, is really get into the group and let your light shine as freaking bright as it possibly can. And that's going to help other people really see like, oh, well, wait a second. This one person may have had a bad experience. Maybe they were triggered. And typically what happens, in my opinion, is that the people who are doing the complaining can be the ones who are really looked upon in the negative light, as opposed to the people who are doing just being that bright light in people's days. So go into that group. Post a motivational quote of the day. Let them know what's going on in your program and how you're so excited to be changing and transforming the lives of 100 children and 20 staff members in your community. And you're so proud and so happy to be part of this community.
No, that's, I don't think I would really have much more to add to that. I think I would approach it the same way.
That's my guy.
You can't hide behind a cloak. And if it's your center, as Julie mentioned earlier in our talk, there are instances that she's seen, that I've seen, where some negativity, and whether it's true or not, it almost is a little bit irrelevant, but it really depends, I guess, on the situation. But if you're not responding, that stuff goes viral quickly. And all of a sudden, like when you have a staff, I've seen more negativity from staff than I actually have from parents.
Yeah.
And usually it's the teacher or the assistant or the director that was terminated for whatever reason, and they are not happy about it, especially in any kind of crazy climate like we are in today.
Yeah.
And they're going to respond out of emotion, and they're going to say a bunch of things, whether they're true or not, and try and stir up whatever drama they can, unfortunately. So to Julie's point, I mean, I do agree with coming out and addressing it. That's always one of the questions I always get asked of when there's something negative. Do you suggest replying? And my answer is always yes to reply, but I like to reply with something that is generic, and then I try and take the conversation off of that thread. So sorry to hear about your experience. We've got 100+ other families that are very happy here. Our teachers rave about us. We've been in the area for 18 years. I will send you a private message to see if I can learn a little bit more about this individual situation. So as long as you're showing that you're replying, that at least shows that you're there, you're active. Otherwise, if you don't ignore, that's actually worse than just letting it, sit. You definitely want to make sure that you at least have a reply so people can see, hey, we take this stuff really seriously.
Yeah.
So that would be what I would recommend.
And a big thing too is to really stand in confidence with who you are. Know who you are, and don't let yourself be in a position where other people define you. As I mentioned, there are some director groups or owner groups out there I can't get into, because you can only get into them if you're an owner or a director. But some clients will send me, oh my goodness, this is being said about you in this group, and who is this? I'm like, I have no clue who that person is, and they just feel like going on a rant. So sometimes you just got to stand in faith with who you are. And if you listen to celebrity interviews or even look at our presidential candidates, what if Donald Trump curled up in fetal position when somebody called him a certain name, or Joe Biden, because it's going back and forth with both, right? So you just have to say, this is who I am. This is what I believe about me to be true. This is how I'm trudging forward, and nothing else matters. And I guarantee you that if you're able to maintain that mindset, you're going to generate more success for yourself than if you're worrying about that one little comment that's being said about you and trying to change that one person or those two people's perceptions. Show up, be the bright light, let people see another side of you, and then have a lot of confidence in who you are and carry that forward.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So, we've still got a little bit of time left, but if we were to look at going back to kind of the workplace stuff, do we want to go back to workplace, or we want to go back to negative reviews or kind of gossip online from a parent? Which one would you like to see?
Either. Yeah. And like I said, if you're here tuning in, let us know if you what you would like to hear more on. And I also want to let people know that after this show, we're going to be doing a free gossip training in our childcare business success group that you're welcome to come and join us. And so we're going to be doing that right at 2:15. So right after we get off here.
Yeah, I'll make sure if you want to shoot me the link on the little chat thing here, and I'll make sure that I get that posted as well for everyone.
Oh, yeah, and if John is tuning in, but if she is, maybe she'll post the link for us. And it's just our free childcare business success group here. But you do need to apply to get into the group, or fill out a little form to get into the group. So that's over at childcarebusinesssuccess.com. Just fill out the free success group, sign up for that, and then you'll be allowed into the training.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So
we could do either one. Gossip is such, it's such a big topic when it comes to either one. But, one thing I want to think about too, and Michael, we could talk about this but how do you feel when you participate in gossip or when you vent about another person? How do you feel about that afterwards? Because to me, it feels like there's just negativity that you're carrying then with you about other things that are going on.
So it almost sounds like, that for some things, there's always tactics and tips and paint by numbers, so to speak. And with marketing stuff, I can say, do this, step
ABCD.
Step 2, exactly. So that's always very, very easy. But it sounds like, obviously with workplace gossip, with team gossip, with parents gossip or negativity online, there's not necessarily a paint by numbers, but it really sounds like, I mean, at the end of the day, we keep circling back to, I mean, it starts with you and your energy and really starting to look at that. So I guess if you were to give one or two, I guess not even tips, but like, would you suggest everyone starts practicing 15 minutes of journaling? I know that we've talked about starting your day with gratitude, for example. I mean, is that, and I don't mean to say is that enough to change everything that's going on, but obviously it's a really good launch pad and a really good starting point. But are there a few things that you're like, because I know you go in and do this all the time, where you go in and help transform organizations and eliminate gossip and really get the team humming and everyone in a great spot. And over the last couple of months, we've talked a lot about that stuff. And we almost always come back to, I mean, focusing on the leader and the person that's kind of setting the tone.
I know, it's kind of like a bait switch, right? We're going to fix your team, surprise. We're going to fix you. But that's where it all starts. It does start with you. And I've had leaders over the years call me and say, please fix my team. And those aren't really the people that I'm looking to work with. The people who I work with are the ones who are really into personal development, that it is a big thing to them, and that they recognize that, hey, you know what, in order to transform my team, I really need to transform myself. And there's some people who don't have that awareness. When we fill out applications for like our VIP program and we ask people that question, most will say, yes, I recognize that it's me and that I have to know that I'm going to be transforming myself to transform my team. But there will be people who say, yeah, no, let's just fix them. But if I were a leader and I was dealing with workplace gossip, one of the first things that I would recommend for you to do is to list out and do keep a journal or keep a log of what it is that people are gossiping about. So if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I heard so-and-so did this, I heard so-and-so that did this, okay, Susan's coming up to me and sharing this, write all of those things down for like a month and then see what everybody is gossiping about and see if there's any commonalities there. Because if everybody's gossiping about wages, or if everybody's gossiping about a certain parent or whatever it might be, then you could wrap your arms around, well, what is the cause of this? Because if gossip is the effect or the symptom, what is the true cause of the communication style that's happening here in the workplace? So once you gain awareness about what people are gossiping about, then you can decide on what strategies do you put into place to really deal with the cause of the issue. So that's where I would really start, is looking at, well, like, what's everybody gossiping about? What is it that I'm hearing? What is it that they're spreading around? And to get really clear on what that is.
And would you suggest having one-on-one meetings with each of your teachers? Do you suggest, from a meeting cadence standpoint, that you have team meetings with the whole group? And I'm starting to think about, I don't know how many times I've heard a lot of center owners say that they have kind of regular meeting cadence. I mean, I seems to be a little bit more kind of, I guess, random.
Yes.
But I mean,
we can when there's not a fire, right?
Yeah. So what would you suggest there to kind of, because to me, I've always felt like the more that you communicate, at least at the top level, the less likelihood there's going to be for other gossip. But maybe that's a wrong assumption. But I've always tried to at least personally over communicate, just so that you're just putting stuff out there, and instead of someone saying, well, I wonder if we're going to be hiring for this role, or are we going to replace that person, that if you're, I mean, addressing it at the kind of cutting it off at the knees, I've always said that you're kind of being a little bit more proactive.
Yes. Yeah. You know, and I am a big advocate. We actually have our own process in place that we coach our owners on for the one-on-one process. But definitely one-on-ones, even if you just start off with 3-minute one-on-ones, get those one-on-ones done. There's nothing that rebuilds trust and opens lines of communication up faster than those one-on-ones. But I know many owners have done them and they've done them unsuccessfully. So please know that there's a specific process to follow to make those one-on-ones really effective. But yes, one-on-ones, team meetings, One thing that I'm going to say is really important, and this is why you've got to know what people are gossiping about, because once you know what they're gossiping about, you can say, oh, they're gossiping about all these things that I haven't been so proactive in communicating with them. So then you could say, all right, well, once a month, I'm going to go on Zoom and I'm going to do a broadcast into our staff group so I could answer questions. I'm going to be there to really talk to them about the issues that are going on and be transparent with issues that are going on. That is one part of the process. Another one is to make sure you've got a CRS in place. And I often ask leaders, do you have a CRS? And then somebody will say, yeah, I can't remember. I'm like, no, that's not what CRS means. CRS is a conflict resolution system. And we have our own that we've developed, but make sure that there is a specific system in place so that when there are conflicts, when there are issues that arise, you're able to say, this is our process for how you resolve an issue, so that team members are very clear on the steps that they need to take. Because it's an NAEYC ethical code of conduct, right? If you have a problem or an issue with somebody, you go and you talk to that person directly. But the problem that we're facing is a lot of our folks don't have the confidence levels to say, hey, you know what, Michael, I'm kind of having a problem with how you're doing this. Is it okay if we talk about it? I'm more afraid, like, oh, what's Michael going to think about me if I tell him I have a problem with something that he's doing and maybe he won't like me? So we have a lot of people who are really dealing with lower confidence or lower self-esteem in this industry. So we really want to make sure that we've got a CRS in place, a conflict resolution system in place, and we model it, and help our staff members find ways to implement it and take action with it and be successful with it.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to post the link that we have here. So let's do show. So it's here. I'm posting it here, and then I'm also going to repost it as well. So we have this here. Julie is definitely the guru when it comes to workplace gossip, team gossip, conflict resolution, all of that good stuff. So I highly recommend you jump in and take her up on some more gratis training.
It is so much fun to talk about. We're going to have a lot of fun at 2:15 talking about workplace gossip. And we're doing this all through November, where every single Wednesday after our show wraps up, we're going to go and do 20-minute trainings in that group. So we decided in the group to pick a theme of the month, and this month's theme was workplace gossip. So it's a big one, and it could totally take you down. And I don't know, did you ever feel like pulled to get into a gossip circle, Michael? Maybe as even a young kid? Because I've got stories that go back to pre-teenage years where I really wanted to be in the gossip cliques.
Oh, and even if you just look at, families. I think that unfortunately, most families inherently gossip all the time.
Right.
All the time. Like, oh, I can't believe what crazy Aunt Ellen is doing, or like, oh,
where John's investing his money.
How are they driving the new vehicle? And like, I unfortunately think it's inherent in the culture. And that's why I keep thinking, to me, as we went through this conversation today, and I think a great takeaway for everyone that's listening is that it starts more with your energy and a lot of everything that you're going to do on a day-to-day basis, regardless of what it is. And this is also my biggest takeaway from today's show, personally, is energy management. And I can look back at the last couple of weeks. We'll use, perfect example today of the election. And I don't talk politics rarely, so I won't talk politics of which side I'm on, because people are, in my opinion, a little bit too intense on either path. Yes. But like, you can wake up today and there's some people that are really pissed off and like, oh my God, I can't believe things are going this way. Or you've got the other people saying the other. And if that's going to ruin your day and crush your productivity, it has that ripple effect, as you said, and it ripples across your team. And the parents are going to feel that energy on the tour. And even if you're not doing the tour, if you projected that energy to your director or the assistant, whoever's doing the tour, now they're going to be a little bit more blah on the tours because they're thinking about your energy. And it really comes back to energy management. There's so many things that you need to be doing to not just grow your center, but thrive, increase your happiness, be able to take more time off, increase your profits. There's all these different things. And if your energy, I mean, needs to be up here and it's like way down here, it's going to be an uphill battle every single day where you feel like you're just like it's you against the world. But it doesn't have to be that way.
No, it doesn't. I always think about yourself as the owner in the funnest role ever. And that is to be the cheerleader for your team, to be the energizer bunny. But you've got to know how to manage your own emotions. You got to know how to let go of things that might be bugging you. But it is your role to be the visionary and to lead them to a place that they can't even see yet in their minds. But we get so distracted by Susan said this about Sally, and now Jane feels this way. And what are we going to do? And everybody rallies around Jane, and we make the dysfunction bigger. We make her self-confidence lower because we're all just kind of playing into the story of what's going on. So it's really about taking personal responsibility and helping team members to do the same, to recognize gossip as a symptom, not as the cause. Because how many times are you really hiring people who say, man, I want to find a job where I could come in and throw crap around and be the gossiper. I could just really stir the pot. I want to be the pot stirrer in the organization. You don't often find too many people who will come in saying that. And that's because that's not what they want. Most people want to work in the most positive and productive environment that they possibly can, but they just don't know how to get there. And that's where they need your help. They need your leadership to figure out, like, how do I get there? Because I really don't want to come into work feeling this way. I really don't, although it's easy to, but it doesn't mean that they want to feel that way.
Love it.
And I remember, I just want to share this little, I don't know if I've shared this before, but I go to chiropractor and go to traction. And before I started 1.5 years ago, I would always do this stretch where I would bend down and touch my toes. And I would find this like relief in my back. Like, oh my goodness, that felt so good. And I remember going into my chiropractor's office and I did my stretch. I bent down, touched my toes and stretched my back out. And he looks at me, he goes, don't ever do that again. I'm like, why? He's like, that is not a stretch that will help your back heal. And I'm like, but it feels so good. He's like, well, that's the thing, is that when you do that stretch, you're playing into the dysfunction that's already there. So yeah, it feels good because it's what's already going on. And the same thing is true in our teams, is that it feels good and we're going in the direction of dysfunction because it's what's already going on and it feels comfortable. And that feels like the path that we may want to choose when we communicate, but we have to do something that's really uncomfortable. And the traction I've been through over the past 1.5 years has been uncomfortable, but it's making things back to where my vision is for how I want my body to function. So I don't know if that was a good analogy, but it's something I think about. When I think about just playing into the dysfunction, it's kind of like, we go in that direction that feels good in the moment.
Love it. Well, make sure everyone that you hop on to Julie's free group. So I'm going to post this once more. You can't beat free training. As always, always enjoyed hanging out and delivering you all some good content. So I think it was definitely a timely topic, and especially around the holiday times coming up, it just seems like gossip and such tends to increase around that time. So do you want to bring us home and give a quote, kind of a parting quote as usual?
I could give a quote. Can I give a teaser too? For what
of course. No, please. Yeah, okay. Definitely.
So next week, Michael and I were chatting and we want to talk about retention strategies. And as you know, Michael is the marketing guru and you must go visit Michael. Michael, what's your website?
Sure. It's localchildcaremarketing.com.
Localchildcaremarketing.net, did you say?
.com.
Okay. Localchildcaremarketing.com. Go visit Michael. But next week, we are going to be talking about retention strategies. So we're going to give you maybe the top 3 strategies that we could each think about when it comes to retaining staff and when it comes to retaining your clients, your parents, because we all know it's more cost effective to retain than to attract new, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So please join us next week. We'll be back at 1:00 Central Standard Time on Wednesday. Woo! So the quote, I thought about a quote today. And I thought about one by Mary Kay Ash. And I may have shared this one before, but it just seemed to be on top of mind today. And it says, imagine everyone as if they had a sign hanging around his or her neck that says, make me feel important. And if you could do that, you'll not only be a success in life professionally, but also in your life personally. And that's not verbatim. It's taken a little bit of liberties with it, but that was Mary Kay Ash, the founder of Mary Kay Cosmetics.
What a great quote. Thank you, as always, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and make sure you get into Julie's group and join those other free trainings as well. And we will see you back here next week.